Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel Besares, aka Mizilla, and I'm back again to make another ranking video. And this time, since I already done the entire show between Gamera and Godzilla, let's not waste any more time to talk about ranking the entire Heisei era of Godzilla. And gotta be honest, this may be a hot take to some people who enjoy this era, but despite the massive praise to this era, but for me, I do find it a bit of a mixed bag. It's admittedly pretty overrated. Don't get me wrong, the Heisei era does have some peaks and has a lot of awesome moments, but this era does have some few flaws, especially the fact that it has a lot of plot holes that completely destroyed this era for me. Don't get me wrong, there's some entries that I do like about this era, especially like there's some moments that I do like about it, but I feel like the only entries that I do like about this era are definitely the first two, which are Godzilla versus Biollante and the Return of Godzilla. The rest of them, in my opinion, are kind of average. I mean, they can be fun to watch if you don't take them seriously, but if you take them seriously, you can kind of see some flaws behind them, especially the fact that most of them just feel like they were just made just to give them like they're more like cash grabs rather than passion projects, and it kind of shows because their stories are just notoriously ridiculous and convoluted, and the fact that the tone just switches from being serious and nihilistic from the first two, especially experimental. But Godzilla vs. Biollante bombed. This is where this era literally started to go downhill for me because all of the creativity, all the passion projects behind the first two are literally gone with the rest of the Heisei era movies. And it kind of shows, especially the fact that the Heisei era started to go way downhill as soon as the later entries came in. And it's evident the few reasons why I consider the Heisei era to be pretty overrated. It's not it's not that bad at least because at least I do like some things about the Heisei era, especially the first two entries, but it's definitely pretty overrated because it has some few flaws and the fact that it's just a missed potential in my opinion because this era is supposed to be darker and serious, especially with the first one that definitely executed perfectly, but the rest of them just brought this era downhill for me. So anyway, let's just not waste any more time and start this ranking. Here's my ranking from this Godzilla era from worst to best. Number 7, Godzilla vs. Mothra. Definitely one of the weakest and definitely one of the worst and atrocious era entries of this era. And it's definitely no hard to see why, considering the fact that this movie is easily pretty boring and lackluster. And you can really tell because of the fact that the story, the characters, the plot points, especially with the fact that Godzilla just feels more like a complete he's like more like a guest character than the main star of the movie, which is baffling because in fact this movie's called Godzilla versus Mothra, and he literally only appeared for like few minutes in, and then he just appears in again at the end and nothing. So yeah, this movie is just easily pretty boring. I know that get to the fact that a lot of people say that Godzilla versus Space Godzilla is supposed to be the worst of the entries of this era, but that movie, well, cheesy and stupid, but at least that movie at least is entertaining. This one is just a complete boring and just pretty forgettable because the fact that the movie feels very predictable and basic, and the fact that it has a pretty forgettable environmental message, and especially the fact that its plot point of a businessman tried to create like some sort of like a business or something like that, but it just goes nowhere. Especially the fact that the human villain just doesn't feel any relevant. He's just there just because we're supposed to protect the environment. Oh, evil people are bad or something, some shit. This plot point of environmental message doesn't go anywhere, and the fact that it is just pretty lackluster. The human characters, the main protagonists, are just pretty unlikable. I can't even stand this fucking Indiana Jones knockoff who just kept on saying, oh, he's being bad, we're supposed to be feel bad for him, but I just don't give a shit. He's just a freaking asshole the entire movie. Even his wife said the best about him. My other complaint is the fact that it has a pretty convoluted motivation, especially the fact for Batra for crying out loud, because he literally has a cool design. He has a pretty good moral message that he's supposed to represent the embodiment of human arrogance. But the movie just completely just throws his pretty arc, his arc, and his motivation out of the window because as soon as when Godzilla came in, the whole rivalry between Mothra and Batch just goes nowhere because they just literally just become friends like right at this instance and just try to destroy Godzilla like now Godzilla's the big bad. But it doesn't make any sense that Godzilla's supposed to be the main villain, considering the fact he only appeared for like what, for like few minutes in, and that's it. He only appeared for like during the opening and later at the end, and that's it. Godzilla's more of like a complete fucking guest star in his own movie, which it's so fucking baffling. And the fact that this Cosmo just literally said that Bachelor intended to defend the Earth, which hello? Are you telling me that Bachelor is supposed to now defend humanity now? Are you kidding me? Did you not realize that Bachelor just been murdering innocent people, destroying Tokyo? He's just supposed to be the embodiment of evil, and the fact that he's supposed to represent the embodiment of arrogance of humankind. Are you telling me he's supposed to defend the Earth? Are you fucking kidding me, Carl? Are you freaking kidding me? Yeah, it's one of the few reasons why this movie fucking sucks. And it's easily one of the worst, and by far the worst of the Heisei era. Don't get me wrong, before anyone's gonna say, oh, you suck, oh, you're not achievement. Okay, I will get this straight before you guys are gonna bombard me, but it does have some few good quality moments, but just because the movie does have quality moments doesn't mean it's good, because it's still bad. The only good quality I would just say about it is because of the fact that it has a pretty good, awesome action-packed moments. Especially, I really do like the final battle at the end. Despite the fact that Godzilla's presence feels pointless, at least it's still entertaining. At least. And speaking of Godzilla, well, let's just say I'm just not a big fan of the design. I mean, compared to his design from the 84, 89, 91, 85, at least they do pretty or definitely menacing. But this one is just pretty bland and mediocre. Especially the fact it doesn't feel quite menacing. I just hate the fact that his roar was changed to a generic Showa roar, which just defeats the purpose of the fact that he's supposed to be creepy and menacing. But here they just turn him into a freaking Showa just to appeal to kids, which is stupid. I get it's supposed to make marketing. I get it's for marketing purposes, but it's just stupid because it just ruined the point of the Heisei era, especially for him. So yeah, and I do pretty much, despite that Godzilla design looks kind of off in my opinion, but both Mothra and Batra do look pretty good. And yes, despite the fact that Batra's motivation makes no sense, but I still really do like the design. Overall, though, the movie is still boring and bad and pretty awful, with a lot of plot points that just come out of nowhere, forgettable and likable characters, a pretty boring story, I a pretty atrocious Godzilla design, and the fact that he just only has a guest star in his own movie. So yeah, those are my few reasons why I hate Godzilla vs. Mothra of the Heisei era version. I like the Showa version of Godzilla vs. Mothra. This one is just a piece of shit. He's a fucking piece of shit. Okay, let's move on. Number 6, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Gotta be honest, even if this entry was notoriously hated by a lot of G fans and considered this one to be the worst of the Heisei era, for me, I do have a little soft spot for it. I mean, even I do defended this movie, but it's still a schlocky mess. But I will give it this: it's at least more fun than boring because unlike Godzilla vs. Mothra, which is easily considered a pretty boring entry with a lot of plot points that are just completely pointless and boring. The characters are unlikable, and I just never liked that Godzilla was treated as a cameo. But this movie, despite all its flaws, it's at least more fun. Yes, it has some pretty bad moments and flaws, especially the fact it has a lot of convoluted plot holes and just some moments that just come out of nowhere. Especially with the moment when a terrorist literally just like kidnapped Miki and just in the fact that some kid just tried to rescue her and this moment didn't go anywhere, or the fact that one of the characters just wanted to have revenge on Godzilla only because of the fact that Godzilla just killed one of the characters in Godzilla vs. Balante, which this moment also didn't go anywhere. I feel like my other complaint is the fact that even if Space Godzilla does look pretty badass and cool, has a lot of cool abilities, and the fact that he can easily limit to its victims or something like that, but his origin just doesn't make any sense. Because the fact that you think about it, during the moment when Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah just completely like erased Godzilla from existence, but for some reason all the events from Godzilla vs. Biollante are still there, which of course this makes this origin just it still doesn't make any sense if you think about it. Even he does look pretty cool, but his origin is just nonsensical. My other complaint is the fact that Godzilla Jr. Well, he does look pretty adorable. Don't get me wrong, but I just do find him pretty bit strange because the fact that he now almost feels like he belongs in the Shaw era movies, which and it kind of shows considering the fact that he almost feels completely out of place. And for Godzilla, well, I still have nothing to say about him, considering the fact that he just feels kind of generic and bland, just doesn't feel quite menacing compared to the 84, 89, 91, 95, because this one is just as bland as the 92, 93 ones. And finally for Mogira, oh boy, because Mogira is just easily a pretty interesting concept, but just terribly executed. Because Mogira definitely has a lot of cool weaponry, has a lot of awesome technology on it, has a really cool transformation moments and a lot of cool weapons. But I just seriously didn't like how the fact he was treated more like a shell of itself because he's supposed to like be the improvement of Mecha Godzilla, but instead most of the time he just gets easily get his ass kicked by freaking Space Godzilla, which is kind of baffling considering the fact he's supposed to be the improvement of Mecha Godzilla, but instead just inferior, which is pretty disappointing. However, like once again, even if this movie has a lot of plot holes and a lot of convoluted plot points and some few forgettable characters and some weird convoluted origin for Space Godzilla, it's at least not boring. It's at least entertaining, like and then in a so bad it's good kind of way because all I got to live with is Mothra, which is pretty boring, has no good qualities in them. This one I could say at least has some pretty good qualities. That at least saved the movie. It's at least more entertaining, more schlocky, but it's fun. It's schlocky, but it's fun. It's just easily a pretty entertaining movie if you don't take it seriously. So yeah, there's my review on this one. Number five, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Definitely a decent entry of the heisei era because this movie has a lot of peaks. It has a lot of moments that do really kick ass. From the kaiju action to the kaiju designs to the set pieces to freaking to Akira Kurosawa's score. Especially the fact that this movie incorporates a time travel plot line, which almost feels like the filmmakers just straight up ripped off the Terminator and Back to the Future. Which all these good moments just seriously makes this movie great or grandiose. It instead just has a lot of flaws, and it's no hard to see why because this movie has a lot of flaws. Even if it has some good moments, it's still a pretty decent movie. It's not perfect, but it's not bad either. At least it's not as schlocky as Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla or boring as Godzilla vs. Mothra. It's at least passable. It's still good, but it has some flaws, which I will talk about them later. The few gripes I have with Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is due to the fact that even the time travel element may seem interesting with this movie, it just sadly just makes the movie a convoluted mess because the time travel plotline with Godzilla just doesn't make any sense because in the moment when the Futurians erase Godzilla from history, but for some reason people still remember that Godzilla even a thing, despite the fact he's supposed to be gone from history, which just doesn't make any sense. In fact, it just usually makes less sense when you think about it when In Godzilla vs. Biollante, Biollante was created because of Godzilla, but if Godzilla wasn't there, Biollante wouldn't be created. Neither was Space Godzilla or any type of crap or something like that. And my other complaint is the fact that the characters, while they're decent at best, they're just sometimes dumb idiots at times. Especially the fact that one of the characters named Emmy in the movie, she literally was the one responsible for literally mutating King Ghidorah to make King Ghidorah more powerful and badass. And then she literally just said that she believes that unleashing King Ghidorah was a bad idea. Hello? Are you telling me that during this time when you literally unleashed King Ghidorah to destroy Tokyo, now you believing now it's bad? Hello? Are you telling me that? Are you not real? You not realize about that till now for some reason? The other characters like the Futurians are just a bit kind of forgettable because I mean, yes, I know they do have a clear arc and why they wanted to destroy Tokyo because they just want to prevent being a superpower. But for me, I just do find the motivation to be kind of clunky, considering the fact that it's just easily quite selfish of them to trying to destroy Japan only because they're jealous because Japan has become more powerful in the future. Especially the fact it doesn't excuse for them to try and murder innocent people just because they're jealous of Japan. And my final complaint about this movie is the fact that, despite the fact that I do like King Ghidorah in this movie, especially with its design, but I just seriously hate the fact that he was literally treated like a complete joke in the movie. I mean, yes, the design is scored by Kira Vakube is iconic and badass, but if you think about it, in the movie when King Ghidorah was literally released from the control, he just started to become more like a shell of itself. And the fact that he's supposed to represent the Godzilla's powerful arch nemesis, it just makes his role really baffling because of the fact that he's supposed to be powerful or badass, but instead he's just a complete villain, like he's a fool for some reason or a moron if you think about it. Yes, he does have a pretty cool design when he turns over to King Ghidorah, but it still doesn't change the fact of how badly he was written in the movie. So yeah, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is a decent entry with a lot of iconic moments, a lot of and badass and iconic fights. Godzilla and King Ghidorah's designs are good and iconic. It's just that the narrative and the plot line with the time travel with some stupid characters and the fact that King Ghidorah was completely written like a shell of itself just completely derailed the movie from me. So yeah, definitely a decent entry, both good and bad at the same time. Number 4, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Definitely another decent entry of the heisei era, along with Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, because this movie also has some peak moments. It has a lot of iconic battles. Rodan and Mechagodzilla are definitely iconic and badass, and I just do find Godzilla Jr. to be quite adorable. But the movie also has some few problems compared to Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah because this movie, while iconic and badass, it just has a lot of flaws that just completely destroyed the movie. And the biggest gripe I have with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 is the fact that the characters are just written as complete morons and idiots because they literally they literally just straight up kidnapped Junior because they just want to study him. But as soon as when Godzilla started to rampage throughout Japan, instead of just trying to do the simple thing, just return Godzilla Junior to its island or just return to Godzilla, they instead just literally just trying to ambition of trying to like kill Godzilla. Hello? Are you telling you could have just returned it to Godzilla's baby and that's it? Instead, the most of the movie is just them trying to kill Godzilla again just because they just brought him because they're idiots. And yeah, this plot point of the human characters being idiots in the movie just completely destroyed my experience with them. Especially the fact that even the Mechagodzilla does look pretty cool. I was definitely kind of rooting for Godzilla to just destroy him along with the human characters because I just don't give a crap about the human characters or their storyline because of the fact that they're pretty unlikable and the fact that their literally motivation just is completely baffling. Just seriously makes this movie completely a mixed bag in my opinion. I mean, it's decent, but has a lot of flaws that completely destroyed the movie, in my opinion. Especially the fact that the characters are literally kind of an idiots. And speaking of Godzilla, yeah, I still have nothing to say about Godzilla because the fact that he looks still kind of bland compared to the other designs, 92, 94 to be exact. But I was still kind of rooting for him to destroy the human characters along with Mechagodzilla because it just don't even give a crap about the human plot line and the fact that the characters are literally written as idiots. Which, yeah, another decent entry of the Heisei era with a lot of iconic moments. Oh yeah, speaking of that, I do find Ronan to be pretty badass as well, especially the fact that I really do like his inclusion. Is supposed to represent, supposed to like at least trying to be first being a rival to Godzilla to literally become friends with him, which at least is a pretty iconic iconic moment for me when Godzilla then literally helps Godzilla and then Godzilla just destroys him because I was literally rooting for Godzilla to destroy Mechagodzilla just because he just want to get his son back. And I feel like this is one of the few movies that I was literally rooting for Godzilla because I just don't even give a crap about the human characters and the fact that I was just rooting for him to get his son back to actually unite him and actually return back to him. And the fact that the human characters just literally learn nothing after the whole experience. They just after seeing their like mech their mech being destroyed by the Kingdom Monsters, you just easily learn nothing. As soon as when the ending occurred, they just literally accept their mistake like right at the end. Which hello, you could have just prevent all this from happening back at the beginning of the movie, but just don't bring Godzilla Jr. to Japan, or just return it to him. But instead, you just complicate your lives and you cause all this shit to happen. So yeah, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, it's another decent entry of the Heisei era, just like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, because both of them have some good moments, but they do have some flaws. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah has some flaws because of the fact that it has a convoluted plot line and stupid characters and just make King Ghidorah look like a shell of itself. This one has some flaws because of the fact that the characters are just pretty unlikable and uninteresting. The fact that they're just idiots at times, and I was rooting for Godzilla to destroy them and killing and even destroy Mechagodzilla. So yeah, it's a decent entry. It's good. It's either good or bad. It's fine. Number three, Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Definitely one of the best entries of the 90s Heisei era movies, by far. And it's easily the most superior out of the other 90s Heisei era movies that are just sometimes schlocky and ridiculous. This one, it's at least better than the other rest of them because it literally has a lot of iconic moments. The kaiju designs are peak. Godzilla himself does look pretty cool and badass. Godzilla Jr. does look pretty menacing and cool. And Destroy is easily pretty awesome and badass. Although a little overrated, but I will talk about that later. And it does have a lot of cool action-packed moments, and I really do enjoy the final battle when Godzilla fought Destroy and everything like that. Although the movie admittedly does have some few flaws that completely destroyed the movie for me. Despite the fact that a lot of G fans consider this one to be the best entry of the Heisei era and also the best of the entire franchise. Especially the fact that this is mostly revolved about the emotional send-off for Godzilla, especially for this era. It does have some few flaws and it's easily pretty overrated. I mean, yes, it's the best entry of the 90s Heisei era movies, and it does have some good moments. The kaiju designs are good, and the new kaiju villain does look pretty badass and cool, but the movie still has some flaws, and especially the fact that I just actually prefer Return of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Biollante more. But I'll explain this one why. The main reason why I do consider this entry to be pretty overrated, or the fact that I don't consider this one to be the best of the franchise, is due to the fact that it has a lot of few flaws. They're literally quite noticeable if you literally think about it and just actually try to watch the movie and actually identify what works and what fails because the movie does have some few flaws, especially the fact that it has a lot of clunky effect shots, like the infamous Godzilla Jr.'s live, which is pretty laughably noticeable, and the fact that there's another moment with the mini destroyers are literally attacking the JSDF and it's revealed to only just be toys, or just instead of just using giant armor size of destroyers, which is pretty just completely ruined the whole tension of the moment. Especially the fact that the movie also has some really badly compositing shots, especially the fact that during the infamous moment Godzilla just completely attacks Hong Kong and nobody really gave a shit, especially the fact that the people below just don't even react to his destruction of it like that. Or the other moment when Godzilla and Destroyer fought in the airport and nobody canceled the flights for some reason, which is still kind of baffling. I feel like my other complaint about the movie is the fact that the characters are just pretty forgettable, in my opinion. I mean, it's good to see Miki and Emiko return back, especially for Emiko, who actually makes a huge comeback for surprisingly, because she makes a huge return since the original Godzilla movie. But even the fact that she's at least cool to see her back, but she doesn't really do anything that much because she only just there just because of fan service or something like that. She's only just there just to bring back the nostalgia feel of the original and then nothing more. And the fact she doesn't really do anything all that much. And my other complaint is the fact that even the Destroyer does look pretty cool, and I really do enjoy the final battle at the end. But I just seriously hate the fact that despite the fact that he's supposed to be the most badass Godzilla villain, but he just gets easily defeated by the fucking military because he literally endured Godzilla's attacks. He literally did endure Godzilla's attacks, but somehow gets defeated by the military, which is supposed to be bad. Like, like this thing is supposed to be something like a final boss to Godzilla, but instead it just becomes like a shell of itself for some reason. He's like King Ghidorah all over again. And this may be a hot take, but despite the fact this movie is supposed to be the emotional send off, but I didn't really cry when Godzilla and Godzilla Jr. just straight up just died because even the fact they're supposed to be emotional, but they really didn't really affect me all that much compared to the ending of The Mist or The Fly. And the death scenes are just not really all that emotional, and at times it just felt like, okay, they're just dead. My other, the other few positives I have to say about this movie, especially the fact that there's one moment where the soldiers try to check on the building, and suddenly the mini destroyer just comes out of nowhere and just attacking like something more like aliens, something like that. Like something from James Cameron's Aliens, where the aliens just attack the Marines, which is pretty badass moment in the movie. Especially the fact there's a good, at least this movie at least homages to aliens, which it's a pretty good moment. Overall, this movie is definitely the best entry of the 90s heisei movies, but I still do find it a bit overrated considering the fact it has a lot of plot hole, it's a lot of flaws and few forgettable characters and just some badly executed special effect shots and compositing moments. But I will get this movie this. It's still better than the most of the rest of the Heisei movies for sure. But it's still not one of my favorites if you think about it, because despite the fact that a lot of G fans love this movie, consider it to be the best. For me, I consider it good, but not the greatest because I do find it pretty overrated. So yeah. Number two, Godzilla vs. Biollante. Definitely one of the best entries of the Heisei era, along with the Return of Godzilla, and it's easily one of my personal favorites, along with the other one for sure. Because I just fucking love this movie because it has a lot of iconic and badass moments, a pretty good and interesting story, a lot of likable, interesting characters. It has a lot of good themes of trying to not play God. Biollante is easily a pretty iconic and underrated kaiju. It's overall pretty awesome kaiju movie, especially the best entry of the Heisei era. I just can't I just can't choose between the Return of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Biollante because both of them are perfect movies, but I did return the Return of Godzilla more than Godzilla vs. Biollante because I have my few reasons why, but I will explain them later. But I still do love Godzilla vs. Biollante because of the fact that how experimental and the fact that it has a lot of good themes and a lot of good moments. Biollante is easily pretty underrated. It has a lot of iconic action-packed moments. The characters are likable. The story is good. The themes are impactful and good. And Biollante is just a freaking pretty underrated. And what I do like about Balanti the most compared to the other kaiju villains of this era is the fact that she's basically pretty sympathetic, especially the fact that she has a sympathetic background behind her, especially the fact that she's more sympathetic than just a kaiju who wanted to take over Japan because she's supposed to represent the embodiment of mankind trying to play God. And the fact that her moments when she literally appears is more less like she wants to take over the earth and more just trying to beg humanity, especially the doctor who created her, including Godzilla, to get rid of her, or I mean, just to get her out of her monstrous abomination. Which just seriously makes Biollante more sympathetic rather than just a villainous kaiju who want to take over the earth or something like that. Which sadly, a lot of people just didn't really get the whole message of this movie because Godzilla vs. Biollante is more than just a kaiju movie because this one is just more about the arrogance. It's more about the consequences of being arrogant or try to play God, or the fact that it has a more message of how you shouldn't be arrogant or you just actually want to accept what nature can do instead of just trying to play God. Because if you play God and literally pretend you have control over nature, you have a lot of consequences. And I feel like Bounty represented the consequences really well. It does have a lot of good moments, especially with the corporate espionage when the Americans, Japanese, and the Seradians tried to get the Godzilla cells. Most of them just wanted to use them as weapons. While all the other ones just wanted to use it as a way to gain profit, especially with the Ceridian agent who wants to trying to get it just to gain some profit out of it. Which is appealing is supposed to represent the embodiment of the fact that Biollante is supposed to represent the embodiment of how arrogant mankind really is. In this movie, I actually do find it as grandiose as the Return of Godzilla, like something more like Godfather Part Two or Aliens or the Terminator Two. And I feel like these plot points that makes this movie great just easily makes this movie a genuine masterpiece of the Heisei era. And it's definitely pretty kind of a shame that most of the Heisei era movies didn't really go with this direction when they tried to make experimental stories and instead just kept on repeating the same schlock like, oh no, we have to gain more profit by just bring back Godzilla's older foes because reasons or just trying to get Godzilla more popular again, which it's just a big kind of disappointing, especially the fact that the box office disappointment of Godzilla vs. Biollante really affected the rest of the Heisei era movies, and it's one of the few reasons why I considered the Heisei era to be pretty overrated because it has a pretty good potential, but it just started to go downhill as soon as when Godzilla vs. Biollante failed, and later the Heisei era movies just started to become more cheesy, schlocky, and just pretty ridiculous at times. Yes, I get it that Godzilla vs. Destroyer returns more darker roots, but it still didn't really convince me because the fact it has a lot of plot holes and the fact it has some really bad executed shots and the fact that it just doesn't really all that interesting me compared to the first two ones that did balance a darker tone a lot more perfectly, which is one of the few reasons why I do like the first two ones more because they're more experimental, more darker, more they balance really well. They're both perfect, and I do pretty admit even the fact that I do like the '84 design of Godzilla, but this Godzilla along with '91 and '95 are definitely the most decent of Godzilla designs because yes, even the fact that I never like how generic Godzilla looks in most of the Heisei movies, especially 92, 90, 93, 94. At least this one with 91, 95 are actually pretty decent and actually will actually give him a free pass because actually at least they actually tried to make Godzilla more badass and creepy. So yeah, those are my few reasons why I do like Godzilla versus Biollante more compared to the other Heisei sequels. I just completely just butchered the potential, the darker potential for this era because because this era has a potential to be telling a good stories with experimental themes, but instead, as soon as when Godzilla vs. Biollante failed, everything about the Heisei era, about how good and potential and good and great was, just started to become more schlocky and overrated. So yeah. And finally, at number one is definitely the Return of Godzilla. It's definitely one of the best entries of the Heisei era, along with Godzilla vs. Ballonti. And it's no hard to see why, because it has a lot of iconic and awesome moments, and engaging in interesting story, has a lot of likable characters, has some pretty good impactful themes of the Cold War, especially the fact that with the Cold War theme with the involvement of the US and USSR, which I thought was a pretty well executed. And Godzilla's design in this movie is just pretty grandiose. Yes, I get that the fact that a lot of people say that his design in this movie is clunky and goofy. For me, I didn't care because at least there's more. This one has more personality and actually feels more creepy and menacing. Actually feels more like he's a demon or a vampire rather than just a dinosaur compared to the later ones. I just really just reuse the same design over and over and over again. I mean, some of them did execute it perfectly, but others admittedly didn't. 89, 91, 95 or did it are literally the ones that did execute it perfectly. Well, 92, 93, 94 are just pretty bottom of the barrel terrible in my opinion. The main reason why I do enjoy this movie the most is due to the fact that how creepy and very nihilistic this movie is compared to Godzilla vs. Biollante. Consider the fact this movie has a pretty dark themes of the Cold War, especially the fact that Godzilla is supposed to represent the not only represent the embodiment of nuclear war, he also represent the embodiment of how nations really are about to wipe out each other, including the rest of the world, like the US and USSR. And speaking of the Cold War themes, I feel like the Cold War tension between US and USSR in this movie is definitely a lot more well executed in the Japanese version than the American version because in the American version they just treated the whole like Godzilla like it's nothing, and just treated more the USSR more like the actual villains. Which to me it's kind of clunky because the fact that it just takes away the tension of how the fact that Godzilla is supposed to be the main antagonist and the one that we really should worry about rather than just their personal problems, which is a bit kind of clunky. The few positive I have to say is the fact that I do like the return of Raymond Burr as Mr. Martin or Steve Martin from the original Americanized version of Godzilla, which I thought was a pretty good inclusion in the sequel slash Americanized version of the Japanese version. But I thought it was a pretty good. Like I said again, the whole Cold War themes are really well executed, well written, has a lot of really good, impactful moments that really gives you chills. From the design of Godzilla, which from the suit to the sidebot, just holy shit, Godzilla just looks like he's not playing around. He just looks like he's just really staring at your soul, almost because he wants to bite you and just turn you into a vampire. Because he's just really, really creepy and really menacing. And it's just one of the few reasons why I do like the Return of Godzilla more. Yes, I get it. A lot of people hate this design. In fact, a lot of people say Godzilla the Destroyer was the greatest Godzilla movie of the Heisei era. But for me, I disagree because I do like Godzilla vs. Ballonti and the Return of Godzilla more. I do think that two Heisei era movies are kind of enough for me because both Heisei era movies from Return of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Ballonti are already perfect for me because they both feel like they're both like a perfect trilogy movies, like something more like Terminator with Terminator 2 or Alien with Aliens or The Godfather with Godfather Part 2. It's just it just feel like two movies that are already perfect with experimental themes, good stories, likable characters. Just seriously makes the fact that two movies that are good qualities are already enough for me. They didn't really need to expand this all that much. Were your section with the Terminator or this one with the fact they just kept on expanding it a lot more just because of money? Which of course it just ruined their reputation despite the fact that they're getting more profit. My other good thing about this movie is definitely the fact that the Super X, the battle between Godzilla and Super X, because the moment when these two collide with each other, especially the fact that the Super X at least knocked out Godzilla when they're both literally have their confrontation. I feel like this moment is supposed to represent some sort of like a David versus Goliath thing from the Bible. I mean, there's some people who dare read the Bible, some people don't, or people who believe in Catholicism just like me, other people don't. But I still do think this moment with the Super X confronts Godzilla and Godzilla just attacks him, and then the Super X just knocks him down. I feel like I started to realize this movie's like some sort of like a kaiju version of Godzilla versus Goliath. Unless if you don't count the moment when the Soviets just accidentally just wakes him up and just Godzilla just cheated or something like that, which is very cheating for me. Any of that though, the fight sequences between the Super X and Godzilla are definitely really iconic and badass, and Godzilla is just really menacing and creepy. Yes, the movie does have some few flaws, but they really didn't affect my reputation for this movie because how I love this movie, how I fucking love this entry of the heisei era, and everything about it is grandiose. From the kaiju design, from the kaiju design of Godzilla, I mean, from the design of Godzilla to the story to the characters to the themes, and the fact that Godzilla is pretty terrifying, and the fact that this one along with Ballantine already enough for me, which yeah, this seriously makes this movie a genuine masterpiece compared to Godzilla vs. Ballantine. Yes, I know a lot of people love Godzilla vs. Destroyer. A lot of people consider it to be the best one. For me, I kind of stick with Godzilla vs. Ballantine and The Return of Godzilla because these two movies are already enough for me. They feel like a perfect duology in my opinion. I'm sorry, a lot of people have disagreement with this, but I still do consider that these two movies are enough for me. So yeah. So that's all for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a like, subscribe, and actually share me your ranking of this era and see what you think it's from worst to best. So anyway, I'm Emmanuel Besares or Amy Zilla, and I'll see you guys next time. See you later, guys.